All right, so get this. Today we're diving into the life of Iqbal Ali Shah, a man who practically wrote the book on self-invention.
Oh, thanks.
And trust me, this isn't your average, reinvent yourself story.
You can say that again. This is a story that unfolds against a backdrop of empires crumbling, cultures clashing, and the West absolutely eating up anything labeled the Orient.
Right.
Iqbal's life was a balancing act of ambition, identity, and let's just say a sprinkle of embellishment.
Okay, color me intrigued.
Yeah.
So this biography you shared, Empire's Son, Empire's Orphan, it makes him sound almost too good to be true. Where do we even begin with a guy like this?
Well, like with any good story, we start at the beginning. Born into a wealthy Muslim family in India, he inherited the title of Sardar, basically a local chieftain under the British Raj. Imagine growing up with that kind of legacy in the middle of the British Empire.
Talk about a culture clash. I mean, I can't imagine what it was like for him to be shipped off to Scotland for a British education.
Right.
That's a far cry from the palaces of India, to say the least.
It was a strategic move by his family, though. A way to survive, even thrive, under colonial rule. But that experience, that clash of worlds, it clearly left its mark on him.
That makes sense. So did he end up a proper gentleman after all that? Did he follow the path laid out for him?
Not exactly.
Okay.
This is where things take a turn. Remember Elizabeth, the Scottish woman he fell head over heels for?
Oh yeah, the one his family wasn't exactly thrilled about.
To put it mildly.
Right.
Their romance caused quite a stir. But these two, they were determined to write their own story. They ended up eloping in secret above a stationery shop of all places.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Talk about a power couple. They definitely knew how to make a statement. Okay, so they head to London, right? What happens next?
London in the early 1900s, picture that. Newly married, not exactly rolling in money. Iqbal decides to leverage what he knows, or at least what he can convince people he knows.
Oh, I've been there. Fake it till you make it, right?
Something like that. He starts publishing articles with all these grand claims about Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The kicker, he'd never even set foot in the country.
Wait, seriously, was he just making it all up?
Well, let's just say he had a knack for embellishing. He presented himself as an Afghan nobleman, an expert on everything from ancient flying machines in India to the looming threat of the Bolsheviks.
So playing right into those Western fantasies of the mysterious East.
Exactly.
Clever, but a bit risky, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. But it worked. He tapped into a market hungry for the exotic, and he wasn't afraid to give them a good story, even if it stretched the truth. And it's important to remember, this wasn't just about money for him, right? He was fascinated by this image he was building, this connection to a romanticized Afghan past.
Which is kind of ironic, right? The book mentioned his ancestor fled Afghanistan after siding with the British. It's like he was trying to outrun his own family history. But go on, this is juicy. Did he ever get called out on any of it?
Well, his luck, or maybe his audacity, it just seemed to multiply. He managed to wrangle an interview with Ibn Saud himself, the future king of Saudi Arabia.
No way! Okay, now that's impressive. He actually went to Mecca.
He did. Posed as a journalist, no less.
Yeah.
And that trip fueled some of his most sensational writing.
Wow.
It's like he went looking for adventure and found a way to make it pay off. This wasn't just about spinning tales anymore. This experience ignited something in him, a fascination with Sufism.
Okay.
That's a mystical branch of Islam, which he saw as a potential gold mine in the West.
So he was a hustler with a taste for the spiritual.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see the appeal, but hold on, we haven't even talked about his son, Idries. Didn't he follow in his father's footsteps?
Oh, Idris is a whole other chapter in this saga. But before we get to the son, I think it's important to point out that Iqbal's life, well, wasn't all glamorous tales and exotic adventures.
Really? Because honestly, it kind of sounds like he was living the dream, traveling the world, rubbing shoulders with royalty, writing bestsellers.
That's the thing about a good story, isn't it? It can hide a lot of the less glamorous details. Truth is, despite the success of his writing and this image he built for himself, Iqbal was constantly struggling financially.
You're kidding. So all those articles, all those books, it wasn't enough.
He was always chasing the next opportunity, the next big payout. And it wasn't always pretty. Remember that halal meat mission to South America we talked about?
Wait, the one where he dragged Idries all the way to Uruguay to inspect a meatpacking plant?
That wasn't some grand adventure. That was the desperate bid for a government contract.
Yeah.
Imagine being so strapped for cash that you travel across continents to inspect meat.
Wow.
That was Iqbal. Ambitious, unconventional, and maybe a little bit reckless.
Talk about a reality check. But even with all that pressure, he never gave up on the storytelling, did he?
Never. In fact, you could argue that it fueled his creativity. Even when things were tough, he found a way to spin it to his advantage. Like, he somehow landed a lecturing position at the University of Montevideo,
He did.
teaching students about the mystical depths of Sufism, all while dodging creditors and raising eyebrows back in Britain.
Hold on. He was lecturing without any real academic credentials.
He was a natural storyteller, charismatic, knew how to captivate an audience. He used that Eastern mystique to his advantage, opening doors that would have remained shut otherwise.
I guess you could call that resourceful. It makes you wonder how much of his success was genuine talent and how much was pure willpower. Or maybe a healthy dose of luck.
Right. There's definitely an element of being in the right place at the right time. This was a period of immense global change. Empires were collapsing, new ideologies were emerging, and there was this growing fascination with alternative spiritualities. Ikbal was a man of his time, able to tap into those anxieties and desires.
So he knew how to play the game. But what about Idries? How did he handle inheriting this legacy of storytelling, of bending the truth?
Idries is where things get really interesting. He grew up immersed in his father's world, learning the art of storytelling, self-promotion. But he also possessed this sharp intellect and a deep understanding of the West. Remember, this was the dawn of the 1960s, a time of cultural upheaval when people were searching for meaning, beyond traditional structures.
Yeah, those romanticized tales of the Orient probably weren't going to cut it anymore.
Exactly. Idries realized that to truly succeed, he needed to adapt. He began writing about magic, secret societies, and of course, Sufism. But he presented it all through this lens of modern psychology and Western esotericism.
So, like a modern makeover for ancient wisdom.
Precisely. He repackaged his father's love of storytelling, his family's mystical heritage, and fused it with the intellectual trends of the time. And it worked. He resonated with artists, intellectuals, even celebrities. He became a guru for the counterculture, bridging the gap between the perceived wisdom of the East and the West's search for enlightenment.
Okay, now this is where it gets really wild. He managed to convince Robert Graves, the poet, that they were related, descendants of the Prophet Muhammad.
It's a testament to his charisma, his ability to tap into that deep human desire for belonging, for a lineage that connects us to something larger than ourselves. But like his father, Idries wasn't immune to criticism.
I bet. Spinning those kinds of tales, you're bound to attract some skeptics.
Some accused him of plagiarism, of distorting Sufi teachings, even of being more showman than spiritual master. And to be fair, those accusations weren't entirely baseless. His approach to Sufism was often unorthodox, his methods shrouded in secrecy.
It's almost like he was playing a game with his audience. Riddles, hidden knowledge, that kind of thing. But what was he trying to achieve? Was he a genuine spiritual teacher? Or was he just carrying on the family tradition of self-invention? Were they both just really good at selling a carefully curated image to the world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one we're going to unpack as we dive deeper into the legacies of Ikbal and Idries Shah.
It's like we're trying to crack a code here. We've got these two guys, father and son, weaving these intricate stories, playing with Western perceptions of the East. But were they just master illusionists, or was there something more to it?
What's fascinating is that regardless of their motivations, right?
Yep.
Both Ikbal and Idries, they had a hand in shaping how the West understands Sufism. That's a pretty big deal, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. But you said it yourself, their approach wasn't exactly by the book. So did they do more harm than good in terms of spreading the word about Sufism?
It's a mixed bag, that's for sure. On one hand, right, they brought Sufism into the spotlight, introduced it to a much wider audience. You could say they sparked curiosity, a genuine interest in this mystical tradition.
But on the other hand, they also played into those existing stereotypes, didn't they? Like their version of Sufism, it felt very westernized, stripped of its cultural and religious context.
It's true. They tailored their narratives to appeal to Western tastes. It's almost as if they were offering this, simplified, more palatable version of this complex tradition.
Which makes sense from a marketing perspective, right? But it also feels a little, disingenuous.
Yeah, it raises questions about authenticity, about that fine line between sharing knowledge and shaping it to fit a certain narrative. And we can't forget the political context either. Ikbal, for example, he was involved with British intelligence. His attempts to influence policy, especially when it came to Afghanistan and the Middle East, it adds a whole other layer to his story.
So it wasn't just about selling books and spinning tales, there were actual political motivations at play.
It seems that way. It becomes difficult to separate his personal ambitions from, the larger geopolitical games of the time. And Idries, even though he distanced himself from his father's overt political activities. He also got caught up in those dynamics. Remember his novel Kara Kush about the Afghan Mujahideen?
Oh, right. He basically framed them as freedom fighters battling against the Soviets.
Exactly. And that narrative, it resonated with a Western audience, increasingly wary of Soviet expansion. He even got Doris Lessing, the renowned author, to support his Afghan relief efforts.
Wow. He was playing on a whole other level. He understood the power of narrative, just like his father. But where does that leave us? Were they charlatans out for fame and fortune? Or were they genuine seekers trying to build bridges between East and West?
It's the ultimate puzzle, isn't it? Maybe they were a bit of both, products of their time, caught between worlds, trying to navigate this complex web of identity, ambition, and this undeniable allure of the exotic.
It's certainly given me a lot to think about. So for our listener, who might be just as captivated by Ikbal and Idries' story as we are, what's the takeaway here?
I think their story reminds us that history is never straightforward. It's full of contradictions, hidden agendas, and unreliable narrators.
So what do we do with that? How do we approach history, or even just biographies, with this newfound awareness?
We stay curious, but we also stay critical. We question the narratives we encounter. We seek out multiple perspectives. And we remember that behind every great story, there are often even more fascinating stories waiting to be uncovered.
Beautifully put. So the next time you pick up a biography, remember Ikbal and Idries. Remember the power of a good story. But don't be afraid to dig a little deeper, to question the narratives you encounter, and to uncover the complexities that make history so captivating.